All right, everybody. Today we are going to be discussing the four biomolecules, or the four biological macromolecules, as they are sometimes called. So let's just get going. So, carbohydrates, the first category of biomolecules, these are sugars. We have lipids, which are the fats, and we have proteins, which are proteins. And we have nucleic acids, which are DNA, deoxyribonucleic acid, and RNA, ribonucleic acid. So specifically, what should you know about these things? So I'd like you to know, what are their functions? Why are we talking about these things? Why are these important? What is it that they actually do for us? And I'd also like you to know the characteristics of each biomolecule. Can you identify them based on chemical formulas? And hopefully I'm going to make that somewhat easy for you guys. I'm going to give you some hints in this lecture. I'm going to tell you about things that I'm going to do to make your lives easier. And it'll be slightly simplified, but that's okay. So the first thing we need to talk about is carbon. And I've referenced this in previous lectures. But here is a carbon molecule here, and carbon is so important to life. Carbon is life's central molecule because it can make 4 bonds. And you can check that out on the periodic table if you would like. You can do that little trick where you count the group to determine the number of valence electrons. But carbon makes 4 bonds. It's also not super electronegative. And so for those reasons, carbon is life's central molecule. In fact, I will tell you what, if you shoot me an email with the subject line, life's central molecule, and then you just give me a sentence about why carbon is life's central molecule. It can be a couple of sentences if you want. I'll give you an extra credit point. Okay, but we're going to see carbon a lot in this lecture. It's going to be in all 4 of these biomolecules because carbon is super important. So here is the most basic form of carbon that you will generally see. This is methane, CH4. You see it here making 4 bonds. Okay, here's an example of 3 of our biomolecules. This one up here is a lipid. Okay, and you can tell it's a lipid because it has this long carbon chain here. Okay, and sometimes you'll see where there's like 3 carbon chains and a phosphate group, but lipids are always going to have these long chains of carbon, and we're not done talking about those just yet. This is what's called an amino acid. It is the basic building block of a protein. Notice the nitrogen right here. The nitrogen there is going to be pretty key. You'll see nitrogens in other places. But proteins are identifiable because you're going to have big chains of these little building blocks all put together. Yeah, this is an amino acid. I think this is glycine. They're going to take my master's degree away. But this is glycine. This is one subunit that you will see big chains of these all put together to build a protein. And down here is a carbohydrate. You will notice that it is in a ring form. Whenever I show you a carbohydrate, it will be in a ring. Okay, so that's not always true in nature. Carbohydrates are not always in ring form. But in my class, for at least this chapter, for this section, if you see something that is in a ring like this, where they're all connected in a ring, it's going to be a carbohydrate. It's going to be a sugar. And you'll see here are 3 examples of it not being in a ring. But again, if I ask you a question on a test, it will be in a ring. I'm not going to try to trick you. So carbohydrates, another way that you can identify them if you're out there in the wild trying to identify them, not in my class, they are roughly 1 carbon to 1 water. If I ever show you one, it's going to be exactly 1 carbon to 1 water, and they generally are, but it's one of those simplifications that we use. But carbohydrates, meaning carbon here, hydrate, water here. They are in the ratio of 1 carbon to 1 water. And we'll go through this and I'll explain exactly what I mean by this. So let's count our carbons. I count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 carbons. So if there are 6 carbon molecules on this glucose, there should be 6 water molecules. So what do we need for 6 water molecules? We need 6 oxygens, right? And we need 12 hydrogens because it's H2O. So let's see if we can find 6 oxygens. I count 1 oxygen, 2 oxygen, 3, 4, 5, and 6 up here on the left. Okay, so we have 6 oxygen. Let's see how many hydrogens we have. I count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And so this is in the format of C6H12O6. Okay, that means 6 carbons and 6 waters are here. You'll also notice that these galactose and fructose, they follow the same exact format, and they are actually the same exact chemical formula as glucose. But because we've moved some of the elements around, these are actually slightly different chemicals, even though they have the same exact formula. Okay, I'm not going to ask you guys to identify, hey, what kind of sugar is this? That's not important to me. Okay, but if you see a ring, you should remember it is a carbohydrate. That is a sugar. Okay, here are some polysaccharides, meaning you have more chains of these things stuck together. Starch is a very important polysaccharide. Actually, all of these are fairly important polysaccharides. Here's glycogen, here's chitin, here's cellulose, which you're going to see in pretty much every plant. You will see cellulose. Chitin, you're going to see in like the shells of crustaceans and bugs. And glycogen, you're going to see a lot in humans. Starch, you will also see in plants. So these are all carbohydrates. So how do we know they're carbohydrates? Well, you know because they're in rings. And I've told you in my class, if I show it to you on an exam, it's going to be in a ring. We'll look at something else that's in a ring that isn't a carbohydrate. But again, I'm not going to trick you with that on a quiz or a test. The other way you know is if you were to count up all the carbons here, it would be in a ratio of 1 carbon to 1 water. And probably don't try it unless you know how to read organic chemistry diagrams, because there's actually carbons hiding in here that they haven't written. But that's neither here nor there. So the characteristics of carbohydrates are they're generally in rings, and if I show it to you, it's going to be in a ring, although not true in nature. It has a ratio of 1 carbon to 1 water. So what do carbohydrates do? What do sugars do? Why do we have these sugars? Why would you ever eat a carbohydrate? The reason we would do that is because they provide you with cellular energy. As we're going to learn about in lab, the processes that your body undergoes to create energy are all about breaking down carbs, or they're about turning other things into carbs so that you can break them down. But that's neither here nor there. What I want you guys to know is that carbs provide you with cellular energy. Okay? So I want you to know what they're going to look like. It's going to be a ring. It's going to be a ratio of 1 carbon to 1 water. And it provides you with cellular energy. Actually, I think I'm going to cut this off right here, and I'll just leave this talking about carbon and carbohydrates, and we'll do the other 3 in separate videos.